So last week, Milestone did another Q&A for MotoGP 23 on Discord with the game developers, like they did previously. And today I'm going to do something very similar to what I did last time, sort of go through all the questions and break things down a little bit. So if you haven't seen the last one, I do recommend you go check that one out first, because some stuff was recovered in this Q&A, unfortunately. In fact, quite a lot of it was just the same questions being asked again, which was quite annoying because they'd previously answered those same questions. So I'm not going to be covering anything that was covered previously, so I do recommend you go watch that one before we get into this one. So we'll just get straight into the questions and let's start breaking it down. So initially, again, they were talking about dynamic weather and flag to flag, probably the biggest feature of this game, so that's why they keep going on about it. And somebody asked, can you tell us something more? How does the flag to flag dynamic weather work? How much is scripted? How much of it is simulated? The response to that was, the overall idea is that we simulate it as much as possible. When you enter a single Grand Prix, you can choose to have fixed weather or variable weather. If it's variable, you can ask the game to have a fixed transition, like from wet to dry or vice versa, or to have a purely random variation. And what happens on the track is simulated like in real life, the tyre temperature, air temperature, etc. With these changes, the player has a choice to make, rush to the pits, or continue by taking the risk. So I'm not focusing too much on the fact that they say you could do wet to dry or dry to wet, because of course they said that previously, but it is interesting that you can actually choose. So you can choose for it to be wet and dry up, or start dry and get wet, or you can actually have it completely random. So I think most of the time I'll probably play with random, because I do like a bit of random variation. Obviously you don't want to know what's going to happen going in, but for some videos and stuff it would be pretty handy to be able to have the feature where you can set it to be wet or set it to be dry, actually set the transition. That will be quite useful, especially if we're trying to do a challenge where can we stay on the wet in the dry tyres or something like that. So that's pretty cool, and obviously it'd be cool for you guys as well to play around with. But of course we did already know you could have both wet to dry or dry to wet, but it is interesting to know that you can set it yourself. So the next question is all about Moto2 and Moto3 flag to flag. Of course in real life that's not a thing, same within the game. They did answer this last time, so the only reason I mention it is because they actually did mention something about the red flag that they didn't mention in the first Q&A. What about the regulation on Moto 3 and Moto 2? In Moto 2, Moto 3, there is no flag to flag. So if it starts raining after the second third of the race director will stop the race as per regulation of MotoGP, and you'll have a quick restart procedure with a short race to end the events. Well, that's not even actually correct. If it's after 2/3 distance, it's just a result. It doesn't get restarted. So not really sure what that one is about, but there you go. But I didn't actually type it here, but basically what they also said was that there's no flag to flag on historic tracks regardless of the category. So if you're playing in the MotoGP class at Donington, at Laguna Seca, at Estoril, at Aragon, which is now a historic track, if you're playing at any of those tracks and the rain starts to come down, you get a red flag. You don't actually get flag to flag, which is very, very strange. And I actually did ask this in the Q&A. It's been a thing since, I think, like 2006, 2005. I can't remember exactly which year, but it's definitely one of those two. I think the first ever flag-to-flag race was in 2006, so at least 2006. All those tracks were sort of on the calendar at that point, or have been on the calendar since, so the flag-to-flag has been a thing at all the circuits that are historic tracks, but for some reason they've decided to put red flags in. I have no idea why. It does seem a little bit bizarre, but for some reason, if you get rain at Estoril, if you get rain at Aragon, the race will get red flagged even if you're in the MotoGP class. So that was pretty much everything about the dynamic weather, because again, they were just retreading a lot of the same stuff. So we'll move on to the multiplayer. They did mention some new things about that one, well, about the ranking system. So we will move on to that one now. How do the ranks work? Is it, for example, bronze, silver, gold, or will there be different levels in between? There is also platinum and legend level. All the levels from the bronze and platinum have different sub-levels, so there's plenty of granularity to fit into the different levels. As for the legend level, that is unique and the highest level. So not a massive amount of information about the different ranks there, but of course we did know there were going to be different ranks in this live GP feature, and it does seem like you can have bronze, silver, gold, platinum and legend, so those are going to be the different tiers that you've got. We did get a little trailer about the online, actually not too long ago, and they sort of showed somebody rising up the leaderboards in the little cinematic trailer, so we kind of know roughly how the leaderboard's going to work. Obviously there will be the different levels. It'll be interesting to see how seriously some people take this, because there'll be some people that are really sweating it out and trying to get each level. Maybe we will as well. Maybe I'll do it for some videos. Maybe we'll try and get up the rank. How high of a level can I achieve? Because it would be quite interesting. I'm not probably as good at the MotoGP game as I probably once was, because I just don't play it as often anymore, and I definitely don't play it competitively online anymore like I once did. But it would be interesting to see. Maybe I could try and find some of that old form again. I think that probably would be quite a fun series, so let me know guys if you do want to see that when the game comes out. But that was pretty much it from multiplayer. The only other thing they mentioned was that flag to flags could be multiplayer, but again, they'd already said that, so it was a bit pointless to mention. So the last little section that they did mention was the physics, because this Q&A was actually quite a bit shorter than the last one, so there's not really as many questions. And the first question about the physics was actually about the tyres. Is there a huge difference in long races between soft, medium and hard tyres? And the response to that was yes. And the player must be very careful to choose a tyre based on the track, because some tracks can't stand soft tyres or vice versa because of high temperature. This is simulated by both players and riders, managed by the AI. So I'm actually reading all this off the website this time rather than writing up my own transcript, so there's a little bit missing. I do remember that Michele Coletti was talking about Catalunya in particular, and that is probably one of the ones that stands out to me as well. Pretty high tyre wear circuit. You want to be using a harder tyre there because the temperature's high. It's also quite an abrasive track. So it sounds pretty similar to the previous games. The tyre wear, actually, there was a big difference. Like the soft tyre would not make it to the end of a longer race. The medium tyre was pretty good. The hard tyre is quite poor in MotoGP 22. It doesn't have much grip, and the medium lasts long enough. In fairness, I don't do a lot of long races, but when I have sort of done 50% races, medium tyre has been absolutely fine. And of course, the tyre wear scaled, so if it works in a sort of a 50% race to the end, it probably will work in a 100% race till the end as well. But it does remain to be seen how much the tyre wear will affect the AI, because in previous years it's kind of not, it's been scripted, like it's decided before the race which AI is going to struggle with tyre wear, not actually based on how they've got the tyres. You know, just some riders will just drop back towards the end of the race. It's scripted into the game, so it will be interesting to see if more of it's simulated this year. But to be honest, I really doubt it. I think it will sort of all be determined before the race start, who's going to struggle with tyres and things like that. And then on to the final question about the physics. This was actually the one I asked. Now, I actually asked it for the first Q&A, but they answered it in the second one. So I think that was a lot of the issue. I think they were just going through a list of old questions and they hadn't really noted down what had already been answered. But the question was, is the bike more balanced this year? And to that they said, we've put more emphasis on some aspects to be more realistic because the bike tends to have a trajectory on its own that you have to manage. This changes the balance in this part, but of course it depends on how many helps the player has added or removed. So actually this one was quite interesting because when they answered it initially, so the first guy, Zanaboni, was actually talking about the bike performance. So from bike to bike saying, oh, well, we'll just try and match the realistic performance. But Michele Coletti, I think, realised what I was trying to ask with the question about how is the bike balance. So between the front and the rear, it was my fault because I hadn't even really thought about it that way. I hadn't asked it very clearly, but fortunately they did understand the question in the end and they did answer it. They mentioned obviously in the previous Q&A that they've tried to make the bike more balanced. They know that the big problem of MotoGP 22 was the fact that the bike was horrible. It was absolutely horrible to ride into the corners because the rear end was just trying to overtake the front. The front had no grip, so you just lose the front, or the rear would just come around because it's trying to overtake the front. It was awful. So it does seem like they've tried to make it more balanced. Again, we won't know until we actually play the game, and of course it does depend on the assists that you've got. Obviously I never use any of the assists, so for me it's not going to help me out, but some of you guys probably do use the assists, so obviously it depends on which ones you have enabled, how it'll work. And of course this year with the new AI sort of neural assists, which are going to be quite interesting. Again, I don't know how particularly well they will work, but they actually try and correct your riding on the fly. If you open the gas too early, for example, it'll shut the gas again and then open the gas at the appropriate time. So yeah, I don't know how that'll work, but I think that one will be quite interesting. But it's good to see that they have tried to balance the physics a little bit more, because the bike was absolutely horrendous in MotoGP 22 in terms of the balance. But that was pretty much it for the Q&A. Like I said, they did answer a lot of the same stuff again, and of course I have gone through the more brief summary this time than the in-depth analysis I did previously, and again that was just down to the fact that they answered a lot of stuff that they'd already answered, so there wasn't really that many questions to delve into, and I thought I'd just add the little bits I did remember. Of course, like last time, I'll leave a link in the description as well to the actual video. There is a full 24-minute video of the Q&A, so you can go and listen to that yourself. And of course, if you hadn't seen the previous Q&A video, do go check that one out, because I do talk more in depth about flag to flag, about the career mode, lots of different aspects. And I do apologise, guys, that they didn't answer any of the questions that you guys wanted to know. Of course, I did say in the last video, put in the comments if you had anything you wanted to ask for the next Q&A, and I also did a community post about it as well. And I did compile them into the list, and I did actually ask them. I'll actually put a little screenshot up on the screen now of all the questions that I asked. Unfortunately, those didn't get answered. I do get it, because obviously they've got to try and answer a lot of questions in a short period of time. They've got to sort of take time out of the day to do it as well, because the developers are obviously busy developing this game and probably some others as well that are in the pipeline with Milestone. They're always making quite a few different games at once. So even though I've complained a little bit, I still really do appreciate the developers actually taking some time out of their day to do this, because trust me, I do know that it can be a bit stressful. I've heard a lot of things from the gaming industry. It can be quite a difficult job to try and get these games developed. If you are new to the channel, please do like the video and subscribe, because we'll be doing more MotoGP 23 content once the game comes out, and of course any news that comes out as well, I'll be covering that as well. So if you like the MotoGP game or just bike racing games in general, this is definitely the place to be, the channel to subscribe to. But like I said, I hope you guys did enjoy that one. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Hope you're all staying safe, and I shall see you in the next one.